appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm here today with Morgan Greer. If you don't know her, you should. Not just because she was at Tribeca, but she's got a resume probably almost as long as mine, and she is not quite 55 years old yet. So, Morgan, thank you so much for being here today. I have a bunch of different questions to ask. I usually try to come right out of the gate with something important. So, I have seen, based on my creeping on you, so to speak, that you have actually taken pictures in 35 millimeter. I'm fascinated by something like that because I'm like 35 millimeter in any genre is amazing. So, why pictures in 35 millimeter and does it make a substantial difference?
I think that with our phones, we get really complacent to taking photos and whatever is easiest,
Yeah.
and you can snap away and you could take a million photos. And, sometimes I take 100 photos and I never look at any of them. And when you shoot on film, you really have to be super specific about what you're shooting. Each shot costs money, there's
Yeah.
finite amount. So I think that it comes down to thinking about what you're taking, what you're capturing more intentionally, and therefore each photo feels more special.
Hmm. I like that. Thank you very much. I noticed as I was looking at your educational background, you studied studio art and Italian both. Very impressive because I like both. But I'm also not that smart in some regards. So most of us are watching this today and wondering, she studied in studio art. So what exactly is that?
Yeah, so I spent 2 years at Skidmore College where I studied fine art and Italian, and it was a really mix of painting, drawing, really tactile media. I did actually transfer to Pratt Institute after 2 years in college at Skidmore, where then I studied graphic design and art direction, and it was more digital design focus with a more commercial background.
Understand.
So really got that mix of physical media with digital.
Gotcha. And on the Italian side, just how fluent are you?
Uh, uh, I think a few years ago I would have had a different answer for you. At this stage, I'm quite rusty.
Yeah.
Conversational, but not fluent.
Understood. Yeah, that's one of my fascinations is I really want to learn how to talk in the Italian language. It's a beautiful language, but I'm guessing it probably takes some skill to sit there and really just it's like with anything, right? You got to practice and practice and practice. So we'll see.
Yeah, like anything, it's a muscle, and you use it, and then you get used to it. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so one of the things that we want to talk about is recently you started a Substack called High Functioning Women. I'd like you to talk a bit about what that is and what people can get from subscribing from something such as that.
Yeah, High Functioning Woman is a Substack about a 30-something-year-old who's really just dissecting what it means to be a woman at this time.
Mhm.
So it's really a combination of poetry and a little more experimental writing that I think dissects some of the internal states that perhaps we don't always speak about out loud. So, for me as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, it takes a really long time for projects to see the light of day. And, scripts can have a poetic component to them, but they also really have a structural backbone that they need in order to exist in their medium. And
Yeah.
so, high functioning woman is a mean for me as a writer, as an artist, to be able to churn out writing and create work with less structure behind it and have space to explore that.
Nice. So far, how has the response been to people that have subscribed?
It's been really wonderful. I have to say, the work it tends to be very vulnerable, very personal, and I've been honestly pretty blown away by some of the responses that I've got. I feel like by me showing up as a more vulnerable artist, the responses that I've got have matched that energy. So it's been really wonderful, and it's opened a lot of doors to really incredible conversations with women, but not just women as well, just individuals in this day and age to um, talk about maybe some of the things that aren't spoken about as much.
Yes, thank you for that. Actually, I think nowadays, especially, a lot of us want to have some kind of a voice or read about or hear about topics that are important to us. So I think that's super important that you're doing that. Of all the things that I know about you, I would have never guessed that actress would be on the list, but it is. In fact, one time you served as an actress back, back in 2011, Facing Trauma. So tell me a bit about how you
Wow.
got kind of pulled into that project, please.
You did your homework. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Mhm.
That was, yeah, 2011, 15 years ago, just about. My entry into the world of filmmaking, I initially thought would be acting. I have to say, I'm not an actor at this stage of my life. That is not something I have done since high school. Um, I think at the time I really wasn't aware of all the different roles that one could play within film. Obviously, it takes a village to make a film. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of people on a film set. But high school Morgan didn't fully comprehend that. And so acting was the first interest that I had into that world of filmmaking and really drew me in. And after some time, I realized that was not for me. And I really found my voice directing and writing behind the camera instead.
Well, without a doubt, especially when you folks see the film, you'll understand exactly why she is exactly where she needs to be at this point in time. But I had to ask about it. Can we see it somewhere? Like, is it circulating the film?
Oh, to be honest, I have no idea where you would find it. I haven't seen that in 15 years and I don't know where it exists.
That's okay. That's all right. I guess we'll just have to live without it. It's perfectly fine. Um, of all the various things that you have directed so far from your history, I note that most of it is in music videos. So what I want to talk about is directed at that. I've never directed a music video before, but I can imagine there's three main components to it just by guessing, which is obviously highlighting the music, highlighting the individuals who happen to be playing and singing, but moreover, creating a secondary background that's not just music. But I could be wrong because I don't direct. So can you tell me a bit about what you feel are the most important elements to showcase in a music video?
Good question. I think it really depends on the music video. I think that there's some music videos that are performance based, some are artistic based, some are really focusing on the artists themselves. I think there's so many ways to create a music video, and the fun part about them is you're creating for an artist, not just a brand. It's a
Yeah.
person, it's a real life person with music that hopefully you connect to. And so I feel like each project is comes with a different skill set and comes with different requirements to figure out what is best needed for that project. But I come from a very multidisciplinary background. We previously discussed I have a background in fine arts and design and also animation. And I used to play music and act. And so I felt like music videos was this world where it just combined all of the things that I was interested into one medium. So that was my first entry into the world of directing and filmmaking behind the camera.
Thank you for that. Also, one of the things that I noticed that you've done, I rarely ever get a chance to talk to an artist who does nudes, and I see that you've done them. I saw some of the work that you've done where you've illustrated, etc. So, as a person who can't even draw a stick person, I'm curious if someone like myself at my age, or even someone younger that might watch this today, wants to start kind of doodling around or learning about how to draw the art form. Are there ways for us to do that with any kind of formal education?
There's always, yeah, always. So before I got into film, animation, or anything, drawing was always my backbone. And I think
Yeah.
that still to this day, drawing is the foundation of any art form. If you can learn how to draw, it applies into every single creative outlet. So that's something that's just always been in my life, and it's still there. And it's a very meditative practice. It's great to get your hands dirty and touch something tactile and real and messy rather than, sterile on our phones. But there's always ways. I mean, I go to open figure drawing sessions in New York City a couple times a month, and it's a drop-in fee. You don't have to sign up for classes. You don't have to commit. You can just show up the day of. So, of course, it depends where you live. In New York City is a special place where those opportunities are abundant.
Yeah.
But there's so much on YouTube. There's so much out there nowadays for people to be able to learn and practice and have those opportunities without having to pay for a formal education.
Wonderful. Good. So there's hope for some of us yet. But if you want to look at actual professionally done, because I do admire the work that you have on your social media and some of the things that I've seen online, very nicely done.
Thank you.
And just when you think that's not enough, there's more on our list. I want to throw this out as more of a teaching question because not all of us get the opportunity to work for places like Nickelodeon, which you have in the past. So if somebody happens to watch this today, one of the things they're always looking for is to accelerate their career. And one of the ways to do that, work for a top name such as that. So, any good suggestions or advice to somebody who may want to get to that same place?
A good question. I worked for Nickelodeon very, very briefly. I was a
Yeah,
freelancer. I was not full time, and it was
right.
after college while I was doing animation. Um, I think that I had luck on my side when I was working for studios like that, and
Hmm.
sometimes opportunities fall into your lap, and I think you just have to have the wherewithal to grab them when they do fall into your lap. But I do think the whole, the whole job industry, the whole creative industry is changing so fast right now.
Yeah.
When I was starting out after college, that world was, it felt a little bit more, there was a wall behind, there was a wall in front of everything,
Mhm.
in terms of job opportunities. And with social media right now, it feels like things, it comes with its own issues, but it does feel like there are more abundant opportunities, or some of those walls are coming down in order to find jobs. But I think for anything, if you're an artist trying to find a creative career, if you are making work and sharing your work publicly, that's the first step in doing anything, because you've got to prove to people that you are um, that you can do what they want to hire you to do.
That makes perfect sense. It does. And speaking of luck, there is no luck involved with these next two feats. You are not only a nominated for a Go Webby, but also an Emmy Award winner. Most of us in our lifetime will not ever be able to say that we are an Emmy Award winner. So what I want to talk about is because you're a bit on the younger side, we've all been told, of course, how awards can exemplify and not only accelerate our career as well. But what I want to ask you is what has that represented to you? Was it a personal goal for yourself? And now that you've met and got to the point where you're, yes, I have an Emmy, how does that help you in terms of wanting to go where you need to go in this industry?
I think that all awards to a degree are a little bit smoke and mirrors, I have to say. But where they can help you is perhaps proving a degree of professionalism to help you land the next job, and hopefully make that process a little easier. And don't get me wrong, I'm very glad to receive the awards. Um, I will not reject them, but I think that there's maybe a misconception that getting some award will change your life, and maybe sometimes it does, but very
Yeah,
often than not, it doesn't. And you still got to show up every day and do the work, and keep making things.
absolutely. Would you please tell everyone? I know, but please tell everyone what you got the Emmy Award for.
So I worked on this project that I contributed towards for the Emmy. It was for a short film called The Dads, directed by Lucina Fisher, and
Mhm.
it was about it was about Dennis Shepard and this group of fathers of trans children who gathered together over a weekend to discuss the experiences that their children had gone through. So it was a really wonderful personal film. I came on board really towards the end of the project, so I cannot take the full credit for it. And I worked on the titles and the graphic design for that. So yeah.
Okay. So it's been said by you and others that one of the things that's important to you is to create films with an emotional depth to them. Okay, so why is this important? I've screamed this for years that any actor is even better than they think they are because they can effectuate emotion. I don't think most people really understand how hugely important it is to make someone feel something when they go to the movies. In your particular case, I did not know until recently that you have a personal connection to this story. So please share with everyone what the experience is like to do a story that's so close to you, because sometimes that can be challenging, correct?
Oh, definitely. But here's the thing. I think good art has to be personal for it to be real. And the more personal and specific it is, the more universal it actually becomes. And I think that it doesn't always feel that way when you're making something. It feels really scary to make things that are personal and vulnerable. But I keep learning over and over that the more specific and the more granular you get with your details and with your story, the more relatable it is, right? You know, we all love reading or watching books or movies, whatever kind of art it is, where you see yourself. And in order to see yourself, it has to be specific. And maybe that doesn't reach everybody, but it will reach some people.
Hmm. Okay. So your 10-minute film, Fire at Will, had its world premiere June 7th at Tribeca Film Festival. So a bunch of different questions. And I love this film, by the way, and you guys will find out why as I keep asking these questions. First off, I understand that you shot this in your childhood home. Now, everyone might assume because you shot it there, oh, that's got to be so simple and easy because it's in our home. But really, is it when you come down to it? If you really think about it, was it that simplistic?
No, it was not. Yeah, so Fire at Will is a film that is not so loosely inspired by an event that happened with my family when my parents gathered my siblings and I together to discuss the family will.
Yeah.
We shot it with actors who looked like my family, and we shot it in my family home. So, you know, at first, it was not my first choice in terms of location. But as all independent productions are, we're tight on money. And so it offered a free location, and my parents generously left the house for the weekend while we shot the film.
Oh,
In some ways, it did simplify the production design process. We were able to use a lot of things that already were in the house, and we didn't have to start from scratch. And then in other ways, there was a lot to remove. There was, you know, we had to be a lot more careful in terms of setting up our lighting, making sure we didn't scratch the floors. And then there's the personal component where, for me, bringing a whole film crew back to my childhood home where I grew up felt,
yeah.
yeah, I was very nervous. I was very nervous because there was nowhere to hide, you know, and there's high school photos of you with braces and frizzy hair hanging on the wall. Like, there's no one else to pretend to be. That was just it. This was me. So,
Yeah.
I felt it was a very interesting exercise to really let go of, you know, the version of yourself that you think you've maybe grown on to be when you leave the house. And coming back there to shoot felt so vulnerable and personal, more than the story itself. Really, the location was like quite visceral for me.
I imagine so. I had read while doing research that you spent your own wedding money on this film. Is that true?
It is true. Yeah.
Boy.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
you know, film production is expensive, and I was at a point in my life where developing my career was more important than having a big wedding. So I don't regret it at all, and I think that it was money well spent, and it seems to be paying off at the moment. But you know, you gotta invest in yourself, and I think that I think our society as a whole, nobody bats an eye if you spend a certain amount of money on something like a wedding. But it's a
right.
lot harder to justify it when you're spending that money on an investment for yourself. So for me, that's where my priorities lied. But yeah, it's harder to justify it to yourself, to your family, to the people around you. And luckily, my family was incredibly supportive, but um, yeah, it takes a little bit of rewiring to do that.
I imagine so. And it takes a lot of courage, I have to say, too. It's hard when you have very things that are so important to you, especially like this, because they're both so important. I applaud you on that decision, that's for sure. Not very easy to do.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
well, While watching the film, I noticed at the very end, I was curious, Film Independent was listed, and I know that they've done grants and other things before. So were they actually a sponsor of the film?
Film Independent was a fiscal sponsor. So basically, they have a program where they come on board as fiscal sponsors, where when individuals are investing money into the film, they can do so if you partner with something like Film Independent. They give the money towards Film Independent directly, who then transfers the finances, and so they're able to get a tax exempt donation, and it goes through a nonprofit. So it's just a tool to help make the financing a little bit smoother and bring on some different types of donors.
Nice, very nice. Thank you for that. So about the film itself, one of the things that I found so unique and different about it is, and I understand it might be the subject matter, so I'm curious. It's like the family comes in, it doesn't even take more than like 3 or 4 minutes, and we went from like 0 to 150. Like the acceleration of emotion and exaggeration was almost instantaneous. And so I'm like, is this hyped a bit? Because I'm like, does any family go from like this to this instantaneously? I'm curious to ask that.
To be honest, it actually feels quite tame for what my family is. This fast pace, everybody speaking over each other dynamic is just how I grew up, and I didn't realize for a long time that that was not the norm. And so when I, when I would go to friends' houses, or once I left that, left the nest, it was only then that I realized that my family was very loud and very chaotic. I should mention as well that I'm a triplet, and so that really plays a big part into the dynamic. And
Yeah.
when there's three kids the same age who are all vying for attention, everything's really a competition. At least it was when we were growing up. So, yeah, the 0 to 100 it's there, it's real. I think that it could seem forced if you don't know my family, but if you do, like the film's pretty tame in
Mm,
comparison.
I
So,
gotcha.
yeah, just I felt like I never really saw my family dynamics expressed on screen, and I was really interested in trying to show that type of dysfunctional, loud, yet still loving family dynamic in a way that I hadn't seen before.
Okay. I find it quite interesting that obviously you mentioned the subject matter at hand is the family getting together to talk about the will. However, you're very clever. It's not just about the will, is it? We start to find out about your family and their role and how they feel somewhat invisible. We start to find out about the actual dynamics of the relationship between siblings, and maybe they're not quite picture perfect as well. So when you sat down to write this, how difficult is it? I call it layering, for lack of a better term, but you're literally taking this on various different layers or levels. So, for you personally, how did you decide? Did you storyboard this and play it out like that, or was it in your head that way? How did we get to the point where we were story-wise?
So the first draft of the story I wrote directly following a real life conversation that happened with my family that was pretty similar to this. So my parents gathered my siblings and I together, discussed the family will before they were leaving on a trip to Africa. And the whole time I kept thinking this would make such a great story. And I was taking notes on my phone. And afterwards, I adapted that into the first draft. And then, as it goes, you go through iterations, and the fast-paced banter and arguing is fun, but there's got to be a backbone and there's got to be an underlying message as well. So you really go through and draft it a bunch of times, go out for feedback, bring that back in, sit with it, and probably wrote like maybe 50 different drafts of it. And then, even by the time that we land on the final draft, it changes even in the edit, right? So you write one thing, then you shoot something else, and then really the edit is the final version of the script. And even within the edit, we were able to go back and add some additional lines, and we cut some things and played with the pace. And so, that's really the final step where the process is continually changing up until the very end.
Okay, I get you. We also get a sense in here, at least from my perspective, and maybe this is the film critic in me, but I'm like, there's the logic part of it, and then there's the love part of it, because anyone that's ever prepared for their final destination knows that it can't be all about logic. It really does have to be about love to some extent, doesn't it? Where we want to end up being, how we want it to end up being, that sort of good stuff that all derives from how we really feel about one another to some extent. At least that's my interpretation. So I wasn't sure if you were trying to aim for both of those things or not, but that's just me taking a look at the story. Um, the other thing that I noticed is the parents are just so hyper accelerated. So the casting, we have to talk about how you found the two of them, meaning what brought you to say yes, them without a doubt.
Yeah, the casting was definitely a tricky process. We went through a lot of different options. For the two parents specifically, we used a casting director, Leslie Wolf, who really put a lot of time and energy into finding the right actors. We were looking, there was a type of look we were going for physically, but also really energetically and
Yeah.
making sure that everyone gelled and brought those different energies to the set. So yeah, we landed on Scott Cohen and Amy Stiller as the parents,
Mhm.
and I mean they were so wonderful. They really like paved the way for us, and were like honestly a guiding light throughout the film process as people who had been on far more film sets than I have. So they were truly wonderful to work with.
I bet so. And they portray the parents in such a way where you can just feel the angst and the anxiety, and you can just feel the frustration too, because there's just so many conversations, so much chaos that's going on. And then it all builds up to this moment that I can't tell any of you about because it would give away the entire film. However, I was curious to ask for those that have seen the film, or maybe someone that will see it at some point. Had you ever considered an alternate ending? Because I think I got the ending, but I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, actually, the ending was really the hardest part for this film. I had written so many different endings and we, workshopped them quite extensively. This was really the trickiest part was figuring out what the right ending for this film was. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it too much to give it away, but I think that all good endings should feel both surprising and inevitable. It should feel like it's maybe the only logical conclusion, but it still surprises you nonetheless. So hopefully this ending got there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And I have to ask you because you are close to this, we're not in it. I was just wondering why we're not in it.
Me personally, like as an actor,
Yes, yes.
oh, I don't,
Because of your
because
connection.
yeah, I really haven't wanted to act in over a decade. So that is not something that I'm pursuing at all anymore.
Sure.
And I think that even writing and directing, it's so hard to be objective when shooting something. And
Yeah.
I deeply commend actors who act and write and direct. I have many friends who do it, and that seems so incredibly difficult. So it's not something that I have a desire to do, to be honest. Just directing that's enough work.
I understand completely. I do. Um, if I were looking at the film Fire at Will and someone asked me, what is this film about? I would say I would shortly condense it into the following. Yes, it is about family in a difficult time of their life having a difficult discussion. However, for me, if I were to say, what is it really about? It really is about the challenges and confinements that love brings, but also the cherished moments and being able to communicate even when things are difficult. And moreover, being able to look at each other and realize the reality of our own situation. But I didn't create it. So I'm going to ask you in 2 sentences to tell us what Fire at Will means to you.
From a surface level, Fire at Will is about a dysfunctional Jewish family trying to settle their will. But on a deeper level, it's about a family who's trying desperately to understand each other without actually stopping to listen.
Very well done. Nice. Now, if folks didn't get a chance to go to Tribeca, where is the film headed in the near future?
We are screening very soon at the Nantucket Film Festival, and then we also have screenings at Indie Shorts in Indianapolis and San Francisco Jewish Film Festival coming up. And then there's a whole slate of other film festivals this summer and fall that will be coming up that we can't share yet, but will be coming soon. So hopefully we'll be making a little tour around the country and some international destinations as well, and try to get in as many theaters and screenings as possible.
Awesome. And as far as you personally, outside of this film, do you have anything else going on or that you're working on? Because I bet you do.
Always. Yes. I'm in pre-production for another short right now. I'm in early development for an animated short, and then I'm also in early development for my first feature film, which is an expansion of Fire at Will. So that's really the big one.
Oh my
So
goodness.
we'll see it. We'll see how that goes.
That's awesome. Now, if folks today happen to want to be able to find you on social media or otherwise, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'd say Instagram is the best one. My Instagram is at Morgan Gruer, Morgangruer, first name, last name.
And you'll have updates about the film on there as well, I presume.
Yes, I will. Yes. And we have a Instagram for the film as well. It's at
Mhm.
firewill_film.
Awesome.
So there'll be updates for all the screenings and all the festivals there.
Nice. Now, this is what I want to say. First off, Tribeca, you should have gave him an award or at least a nomination. That's just my personal thought. Because honestly,
Thank you.
you have done some incredibly strong, sensitive work and with great emotional depth. Like you said, you love doing that sort of thing. You've aced it and done tremendously well with this. And not just because it got your family and your scenario recognized, but there are families all over the place, I bet, that are watching this and thinking, oh my God, it's kind of guilty pleasure delightful, if that makes sense to you. So we
Yeah,
appreciate your
absolutely.
work. Most of us appreciate your work
Thank
and your
you.
talents. And I'm just so thrilled that Tribeca gave me a chance to be able to meet you.
Thank you. And likewise. And honestly, even just having a chance to screen at a festival like Tribeca, we had 4 screenings. They were all sold out. That's more screenings than most festivals give for short films. So
Mhm.
we feel incredibly lucky and grateful. And honestly, it's been a blast to be able to share it with people.
Awesome. Thank you so much.